Welcome to Continue Mission Radio with Captain James McCormick. By veterans, for veterans. Guest hosts tonight are author Greg Meekin and Miss Val, our military radio gal. Continue Mission starts now.
You got me headed to the left, headed to the right, headed back and forth, but baby, it's alright. You got me going to the east, going to the west, going up and down, 'cause baby, you know best. All day, all night, running around, I'm never gonna stop because you never settle down. Got me shooting into space, flying at the sun. I'm never coming back, 'cause baby, you're the...
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this rapid deployment tonight. I am going to be streaming a show that will be starting live here momentarily. So thank you so much for sharing this broadcast. It's a rapid deployment. And tonight we are going to be following Gulf War side effects. Their live stream is moments away from beginning. So bear with me, please share this broadcast, and it's going to be a great segment tonight. So just bear with me as we get going here. I will try and play you some music. So give me just a minute here to get going with things.
Memories of Desert Storm, we're still feeling the ground. He came back home, but he's not really here. His eyes were lost in a faraway year.
Welcome to GULFWAR Side Effects. I'm your host, Kevin Simon, and y'all know my co-host, Wade Renard. How are you?
I'm absolutely fabulous.
I am actually very excited about tonight's podcast. We have retired Army Captain James McCormick. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on the show, guys.
Hey, well, man, I'm excited about tonight. And so, right before we begin, I want to thank everybody for listening. Thank you all for your support and going in and watching the after show and everything, which we will be doing that again tonight. We won't be doing it live because it's just too hard to set up. And so we're not going to do that. But I want to get right into this, James, because, you weren't just in for 4 years, 6 years. You were in for over 20 years.
Uh-huh.
And so when did you go in, and where were you, where was your boot camp, and what was your job in the very beginning?
So I started out, I joined the Army National Guard in West Virginia in 1985 when I was 17 years old. I wanted to get in as quick as I could, and I was actually contemplating quitting school. At the time, you could have a GED and get into the Army. And I just wanted to get away from, home and all of that. And I write a little bit about that. I did write a book. It's called Battle Tested Faith. That's a shameless little plug for my book, but it talks a little bit about that whole journey. And when I went in, drilled with the Guard unit, was a 19 Delta Cavalry Scout. I left for basic training like right after high school graduation, 2 weeks after that. I went to Fort Knox, Kentucky, to Disney Barracks. They called it Disney Barracks, although I don't see anything fun or Disney related there, except for, I had this great drill sergeant who used to say things to me, and I had never been talked to like that in my life. I had never heard that kind of language in my life. So I got an education in it, and in a lot of ways, training was hard. I got there in June. It was one of the hottest times of that time period. It was extreme heat wave, June 1986, and came back home in October. Fell in love with the Army. I said, I want to do this full time, and I did. And it took me 6 months, and I went down to Fort Stewart, Georgia, and I got down there in June of 1987. And as soon as I got there, I was assigned. I remember going to the reception station. They're welcoming you in. They say, first to fight, victory, home of the Victory Division. And it was just a tremendous honor to be in that unit. But I went in and I had this sergeant, had a first Cav combat patch from Vietnam. And he looked at me, he says, "You're going to the Cav." I said, "Going to the Cav? Okay, well, I'm a cavalry scout. That's good. I want to go to the Cav." He said, No. He says, "You don't know about the Cav here." And I started hearing about all the time they were in the field. And yeah, look, I'm 19 years old by that time. That's cool with me. And they sent me down to get my equipment. And they said, "Oh, by the way, you need to go over and draw desert camouflage uniforms. You're going to Egypt." And literally, I got there in June the 24th. In August, I'd landed in Cairo West for Operation Bright Star 87. So, I mean, here I'd been in the Army, active Army, not even 2 months. I'm already in the middle of the Arab Republic of Egypt. And it was just a great experience. And that whole time period, I'm a private. So I know what it's like, made PFC, got to do a lot of work with different units and different organizations, because at that time the Army was experiencing a budget cut, except for like the Ranger Battalion. So the Ranger Battalion picked us up for 60 days. I came back from Egypt. I was home maybe a month, and we got sent to Puerto Rico for Operation Ocean Venture. And we ended up basically serving as the op for the Ranger Battalion to simulate attacks on different positions. And later on, we would find out that all of that was building up to the 1989 invasion of Panama. So they'd been talking about, what was going on with Noriega a long time. So I think for me, the Army was fun. And when I finally made Sergeant E5, in 1989, so I got promoted really quick.
Wow.
I was coming up on a reenlistment time, so I think I'd like to go infantry, and so I did. And they sent me over to Fort Benning. I went through AIT. It was easy, but now everybody was cussing and hollering, carrying on and stuff. But at that time, they put you on Sand Hill. Sand Hill had just opened up, and
But you had it easy.
yeah. Oh yeah. Look, man, I went to, we used Harmony Church for a training site. So I know what that place sucked really bad.
I did Harmony Church in 87.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I'm going through this in 1990. I go through an AIT program. Everybody's pretty chill. And I get to my unit, which is HHC 2nd 18th Infantry Scout Platoon. I thought I was going to go to a regular rifle company. I thought, well, so I'm dual MOS 11B, 19D. And they send me over to the Scout Platoon, because I'd been a scout. But I was okay with that. Going to, get myself ready, going to go to jump school. I told you that. August. Nope, you're going to Saudi Arabia, baby, with everybody else. Lou doing the whole cruise going. And so I had known this unit for maybe maybe a month at best. And I was a squad leader, and we went to Desert Storm, and we sat in the desert for a long time. That whole experience, as those of you that were there in Desert Storm when you first got there, you guys had already got there in the 82nd. I remember some of the things I remember seeing is your Sheridan tanks from the 82nd. And, that was your hard line defense. So we're starting to fall in. We're unloading ships full of tanks. I mean, this is getting serious, serious, serious. But it just seems like I can remember a lot of driving, sit in one place for a while, drive north, drive west, sit there for a while, couple months, north and west. Of course, the president, his wife came over Thanksgiving, and they came to see us. And then after Christmas, and I remember right after Christmas, after New Year's, that we hit the road and we drove and drove and drove until we got like really close to the border. That they called it the neutral zone. It was a diamond shaped area called the neutral zone. And getting there and setting up, we couldn't, no light at night. I mean, you were definitely in that mode. And then, of course, they kicked off the air portion of Desert Shield to Desert Storm. And hell, we knew it because, I mean, everything was blowing up. It was cracking. The skies were constantly booming with sonic booms from all these aircraft that are flying over. So, you figure that out really quick. So we got and it's funny, I'm going to say this, okay, and I hope that y'all don't get in trouble, but I answer this TA1 field phone, ring, ring, warning, Desert Storm or Desert Shield is now officially Desert Storm. And I was like, no shit, that's what we get. I said, everything's blowing. We see it. You know what I mean? You see the tracers going across the sky where, the air defense units in Iraq are trying to shoot these aircraft down. And but what I do remember is moving up into that neutral zone in the cover of darkness, and for many days just sitting up in the hatch with a pair of night vision goggles, watching and counting the flares and stuff. And there were a couple of times when the Iraqis were firing ZSU 23-2, whatever it was, the 2-gun 23-2, and the shells were coming down and blowing up and hitting the ground behind us. So you'd hear boom, crump, 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 because they're shooting at the aircraft that are flying over. They're not hitting anything, but it's coming down in behind you, and that was just kind of weird, and it was kind of spooky, kind of. If you ever watch that, I'm trying to think of it. Golly, nah, it's not.
Well,
Anyways,
I'm telling you right now, that's why I did not join the Army.
so we'd set up in there, and I had this driver. We called him Hoopty, and we'd set up there in the hatch, pulling guard duty, 2:00 in the morning. It's a spooky time, and you're just calling in, constant spot report, flare, da da da, and you'd have to give them the direction. And then all of a sudden, I'd hear him down there rustling around, and I don't know how he'd do it, but he would fire up this little stove down there. Hell, you couldn't see anything. And then all of a sudden, a hand would come up with a cup with hot tea. He'd say, "Here you go, Sergeant Mac." And he always was there doing that kind of stuff, or coffee or whatever. Those guys, we were very, very close. I had a guy that was a dual Canadian citizen. His name was Tad Kellett. He was from Saskatchewan, Canada, and drove all the way into Montana to join the U.S. Army. And then we had Ron Funderburk, and then a guy named Lionel Ellis, and then we had Rob Steers, who was we called him Hoopty, and that guy could fix anything. I mean, the vehicle, we blew the engine up one time, and we had a guy that found a motor, and I don't know how in the heck they got that motor changed out, but they did. They brought an M88, they pulled the motor out, the engine out, put a new pack in. And here's old Hoopty in there, just, and I'd go up and I'd say, "You need any help?" He'd say, "Just leave me alone. Just leave me alone." But you had somebody from Ohio. Ron Funderburk was from Alabama, and then I had that big Canadian, and then I had Lionel Ellis. He was from Alabama as well, and then Mississippi. He lived there for a while. And we were very diverse, guys. I mean, we had no problem with racism, bigotry, or any of that shit like that in there because we were all in the middle of the suck, man.
Oh,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? And didn't matter what color you were, didn't matter if you were from, a hillbilly from West Virginia like myself or from big Chi-town Chicago, it didn't matter because they had your number. You know what I mean? And if you don't stick together, you're going to die. I mean, that's just the way that it is. And, I don't know what, I see what's going on around the country today and some of the stuff I see, and I'm like, yeah, you obviously haven't been to combat. If you went to combat or you were in the military or any kind of a situation like that, you'd figure out that you got to work with people. You figure out that middle ground. These
Right.
guys will get grumpy. You're together in the middle of the desert, which drives you nuts. The flies are flying all over your face. I mean, it's just no shower for months. You remember that, right?
No,
James?
no, I don't remember that at all. I had a shower every night.
The
Let me tell
fly,
you something.
the fly.
I reached down, man.
Nobody
I'm
smelled,
tell-
smelled the same.
We all smelled the same. And I went to go use the bathroom one time, and I went to pull up my underwear, and they ripped in half. I was like, the hell with it. I'm just going to rip them off. Ain't no sense in wearing underwear.
I was gonna say there was no underwear. From the second week I was in the 82nd, I didn't wear underwear for 4 years. And my girlfriend, she just thought that was the most disgusting thing ever. I'm like, what are you gonna wear underwear for? She didn't get it. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it is. It'll dry right off of you. It'll rub you raw.
And Rod says 43 days without a shower. So, man, I bet y'all stunk, man. I bet y'all stunk.
I was right there with Ron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't stink because everybody smells the same.
That's it. That's it.
Well, I guess so, man. Y'all wouldn't have came on our ship without taking a shower. I'm telling y'all that right now. Y'all been like, y'all gonna go in that damn shower for you think you coming in here.
We would have been happy to have been there, man. Hot shower. That would have been nice.
Oh, man.
I
It all does sound great until you lay in, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, bunch of Army guys, but you lay on a little bitty mattress, and they call it the coffin rack, and you're laying in there, and I barely fit. I don't know how people 6 foot join the freaking Navy, man. It's like,
yeah.
absolutely freaking not, But I mean, I couldn't imagine being out in the desert 43 days, no underwear, and no shower.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just
We
crazy.
depended on mail. Mail call was a big deal.
huge.
It was a huge deal. And then, they said, well, we got a big phone bank, so you could go make a phone call. I got to make one phone call when I was over there during that time, but I had to go get on a truck at 4:00 in the morning, ride for 8 hours. It seemed like, to go all the way down to Daharan or wherever they had this place at, Daman or wherever. And then you get on the phone, you got 10 minutes for a call. Well, it sucks for you if your person don't answer the phone, because guess what? You better be able to ring it up real quick, because you're going to get 5 minutes for the next person. And so I remember getting a hold of my grandmother saying, hey, Granny, I don't have much time. Well, how you doing, honey? You had a little bit of a talk there. And the next thing you know, 5, 4. So you've ridden that a whole way. You know what I mean? And you just looking at these guys running that phone bank, and you saying, you suckers, I bet you're on the phone every night, man. I know what's up. I'd have bust your head.
I think I called home twice, and I remember playing one of them. I was talking to my mom, and some idiot put a paint primer or thinner right above the exhaust, and it blew up. And I mean, the only thing you can think of is, holy crap, we just got blown up.
We're under attack.
And I literally said, Mom, I got to go. Our ship just blew up. And I just hung up the phone.
Oh, shit.
I left her there for at least a good couple hours. And I
Yeah.
went back and I was like, crap, I got to call her back. So I called her back and she was still crying. I felt so bad. I didn't call home after that again, I don't think. I was like, no, I felt bad until I knew I was the safety. I was like, no, I'm not calling again. I felt horrible. That's just mean. If my kids would have done that, I would have went to Iraq and found them myself and whipped their ass.
Yeah, well,
Telling you right now.
yeah, I'm telling you, man, there was a lot of that wanting to whip people's asses, and then once you get put in that scenario, and you're locked in, I'm telling you, when they unleashed the Kraken, so you watching the Air Force, they're just kicking the dog crap out of the Iraqis, and then when they finally unleashed the Kraken, we had no problem laying down lead, doing whatever we needed to do because we were pissed. It's like, you got us over here and all of this stuff. What we were really upset about is whenever it ended, and it ended so quick. I mean, and it was like, no, we're not done. We're not in Baghdad yet. And they're like, well, that's not the mission. The mission was to do this.
Right.
I got it. Okay.
I remember everybody being pissed about that.
And then it's over. I just want to go home now. And we just sat there. I remember I found a letter I wrote home to my mom. I give it to my daughter for a project, and I was reading it, and it was a letter back saying, I don't know why we're still stuck here in Iraq. I think they forgot about us. And going back and reading that letter, it's just like, where was your mind at that time?
Yeah. Yeah, my mother kept a whole bunch of stuff. She kept all the newspapers, and she gave me this huge garbage bag, and it was like every letter that I had written.
Yep.
Mine too.
It's
She
crazy.
had all that stuff, and so I've got it locked up in up in our storage area, and I think every now and then I'll venture in there and I'll pull something out and I'll give it to one of my kids. Here, this is something. And I mean, I found Iraqi bayonets that I'd brought back from that war, that had just been in this foot locker for, what's been now 30 plus years, which is hard to believe. It's very hard to believe that it's been that long. It was time flies. That war was fast and it was violent. The highway of death, as you know, was no joke. It was violence on the 1000th degree. It was like a monster movie, and I wrote about that in this book. And it wasn't so much what you did, but what you saw.
Right.
You were cruising down the road, and we stopped to get fuel. And I remember there was a truck setting off beside of us. And it had a little fire flickering in it. You could see there was a little fire flickering in it. And I come out of the hatch and I was talking to my buddy Hoopty, who was getting ready. I was looking for cigarettes. Well, hell, we was about out of cigarettes. And Hoopty hit me on the shoulder and he said, "Look over there, Mac." I looked over there and there was a guy sitting there literally with his head gone in a truck. And then I said, "Oh, wow." I looked down. There was a guy laying there sprawled out like this and had a pack of those summer cigarettes in there. And I jumped off the track and grabbed the cigarettes out of this guy's pocket. And we smoked his cigarettes, a dead guy's cigarettes. People would say, "Oh, well, what a bunch of assholes." No, that was war. That's the reality of it. The supply lines had definitely not caught up with us. And we were all craving that nicotine. And I'll never forget it. They were in a dark blue container and they said Summers on it. They were terrible tasting cigarettes, but we all smoked them.
Well, that's because he licked them before you smoked them.
He probably did, that son of a gun.
Remember they had the special beaties?
The beaties, man. I love the beaties.
What's the beaties? What that's some beaties?
They were they looked like little marijuana joints.
Yeah, little Turkish made things, man. Yeah.
Really?
If you smoked them fast enough, you got a good little high from them too.
Yeah, they're for real, man. Yeah, I mean, I've tried to find some of those since I've been home, and I can't. They say it's illegal to buy them here.
Just got to go to the right state now, I guess.
It's funny because the only bubble gum that you could find anywhere in that whole freaking country was Chiclets. You couldn't
Yeah,
buy.
chiclets, yeah.
That's the only thing you could buy bubble gum, and I would buy the whole pack, the big box of them. I
Yep.
just put them in my rack because I knew next time I go, that's the only thing they sold was chiclets.
Yeah.
And then I came home. That's the only thing I kept looking for is chiclets. You know, the bubble gum. And so it's really weird to think about the times back there. And like,
Yeah.
the other thing is like after the war was over, we were able to go out in town and we go to Gold Soup and we go to these places. I remember one time I went in and they had where you can buy a tape that you can let music tapes.
Like cassette tapes.
Yeah, cassette tape.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I was like, "Oh, look at that, man!" And it would be like Reba McEntire. I'd go back and play it, and it was not Reba McEntire. I don't know who in the heck it was, but I got
Oh,
ripped
you was
off,
buying
man.
the Haji tapes, man.
Man, right, exactly. And it was like different music. I think I still have some, and I was like, man, I bought a whole bunch of them suckers. I spent like 20, $30. And I'm like, get back. I put them in, I play it, and it is nothing of country music or no rock, no nothing. It's their music. And they just put the name like Reba McEntire on there. I remember that. That was pretty funny.
They were selling DVDs. You know, DVDs were big in the second time I went over there. I love it. I'll just touch on this real quick, and then we'll go back to Gulf War One. But I had one of my guys, he come in there, had like 3 pornography movies, man. He thought he had pornography movies, you know. And well, they got him good, man. I think he gave $20 a piece for them things. And he had this little DVD player. He says, I'm gonna check this out. And he opened the thing up and started playing, and it was just blank, nothing.
Yeah, I mean that it was just stuff like that. It was like,
Yeah.
and then another thing was is they sold pictures of the
Yeah.
war. If you go in any of their stores, they have pictures of all kinds of like tanks blowing up other tanks and all kinds
Yeah.
of stuff. I was like, "Well, who the hell took these? You know, and you know, like did somebody go in? They took them. They were like, "Hey, can you please get this film?" And then they make second copies of them and put them out there to sell. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it was crazy. I forgot all about that till you started telling me that.
Well, hey, look, man, that's what we're here for. We talk about them things. We bring back there's good memories. Now, so I remember things like jumping out of the vehicle to get those cigarettes. And what I remember looking at this guy, you know, I looked him in the face. His eyes were like wide open. You know, you could tell there was a look of terror and had that glassed over, you know, when you die, your eyes turn to this paltry looking gray, and you're blue. I mean, they're just as blue as you know,
Like
the penguin rear end, man. Yeah.
Ash.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at his face and not seeing any marks on him, you know, and it was just like, huh, you know, that's what it's like there. And you know, you just it's a strange experience. You know, it really is. It's not like going to the funeral home. I mean, this guy had been killed probably a few hours before we had got there, and it was quite the experience. And then of course the days following and the combat, you know, going into Objective Guard and Toledo Airfield and some of these other places, you know, where you were engaged in combat with the enemy, you know, and where you're going into bunkers and you're clearing people and you're taking prisoners if you can take prisoners. Mostly you're searching the dead, and then the days following, the dogs that just showed up out of nowhere and started feasting on the bodies of these dead guys. You know, we spent an incredible amount of time, and there were groups of people that went around dog hunting, you know, because these dogs were vicious, they were wild. I'd never seen so many dogs in my life. I didn't know that they had that many dogs, but it was a very spooky thing to see a dog ripping out the jugular of some guy that's dead. It's just you know, it's the stuff that nightmares are made out of. And everybody that I've talked to that was on the ground and in the first Gulf War, the dogs seemed to be a similar thing that we all experienced it, during that time. Wade, you probably saw some dogs
I
out
was
there.
gonna say I got a couple of pictures of a dog that a couple of the guys actually adopted the dog. They didn't bring it back,
Yeah.
but they adopted and fed it, whatever. I
Uh-huh.
was gonna jump back because you was talking about when you come across the dead bodies, the very first time that we had seen, and I know you know what I'm talking about, but in an incinerated, and I know Dennis has seen this too, the incinerated vehicle, the body inside, it's not blown apart. The vehicle is just completely burnt, sitting on its axles, and everybody are like, what the hell hit that? Nobody had ever had experienced. Anybody had ever seen anything before didn't know what it was. It was the first time we started using depleted uranium rounds.
Yeah.
And then they were explaining, and I was just a young PFC. I had no clue. And the depleted uranium goes in, blows, and just incinerates everything. And then there's, like you said, the dead bodies, but it's just the skeleton that withstands the heat of that incineration. And they're just, and as you're coming, there is the body is just smoking. That's how it is the most eerie, god awful thing. The smell of burnt body. And anybody who's ever smelt it knows what I'm talking about. It is just unbelievable.
And then now the highway of death, how many miles would that be, do you think?
I'll tell you, I just remember driving, and it was like it never ended. So my driver has better memory and recollection than I do, because I just felt like I didn't think and dwell on it that much, but mainly because of the second time I went over there was pretty bad. You know what I mean? But miles, hours, many hours driving. I just tell you, it's just like taking the stops, and getting out to take a whiz and watching. I didn't want to take a piss on a dead guy, but there were so many around sometimes. Or you were driving down the road and they're laying in the middle of the road, and you saw a lot of these guys that were crushed and just mangled by the tracks. It's because they were there, and we were doing that forward push, and we were, we're a scout platoon, so we're like right out in front of, this battalion that's telling you get moving. My driver's really trying to not run over, these guys, and I'll never forget getting the call on the radio, hearing the call on the radio saying, you guys need to pick up the pace. And the driver's like, well, I've got all these dead bodies out here in front of me. I'm trying not to run them over. And the response was, we got a mission to do, pedal to the metal, F them, they're dead, whatever. We heard several things, and nobody cared. At that point, the end result of that, when you're driving a tracked vehicle like that, you're going to pick up shreds of clothing. You're going to throw blood all up and down the side of your track. It's a mess. It'd be like running over 1,500 dead deer on a road. Eventually it's going to hurt and then when you stop the next day, and your driver's out there pulling out a section of shirt or pants or whatever, it was, look, it was Frankenstein movie, crazy Mad Max violence. There was no glory in that. Okay. There's no glory in that part of war. People like to brag or whatever. I tell you this because it's true. This is really what happened. And people say, well, it was war. War is hell. Well, yeah, I guess so. But it's really, you're really in a struggle. Now, if you keep your senses about you and you don't give in to, if you don't turn this into, I'm just going to be an evil, wicked bastard, you can maintain your level of sanity. You really can. But there's often times when I reflect on, I think, well, what if I would have been one of those guys laying in the road, and my mother, all she was able to get from me is a blotched up, handful of goo. And that's the kind of things that you're talking about. But the weapon systems, and the depleted uranium, the fast moving weapons that went in and just incinerated, literally blew the tops off of tanks. I watched one M1 Abrams take out 6 Iraqi tanks in less than 10 minutes. Killed
Wow.
every damn buddy. I mean, they just boom. That's the power of the United States. And it's one tank. So if anything, hopefully, our adversaries, and I think they did, they took note of that and they saw that. The Russians absolutely, we were always terrified of the Russians coming across the border. After fighting that war, I no longer worried about the Russians coming across, because I could put 2 tanks in the Fulda Gap and take out a battalion, and clog that gap up with all of their burning hawks. And that's the reality of what Desert Storm showed us. The Tomahawk missile, and nobody had seen anything like that before in the history of America. War was played out like a video game, but the people back home watching it didn't realize that it wasn't a game. It was violence and hatred and deep burning in your brain stuff, man.
Well, we discussed that before on a previous episode, but we had a complete armament of brand new, if you will, toys. Everything from the first time NVGs, first time we used GPS, all the way up to the B-2 bombers, the stealth, and everything in between. And we unleashed everything to see if they worked. We have to test them. And then Desert Storm was a ginormous test ground, and it tested positive. I mean, they proved to be effective.
But also the one thing that isn't discussed a lot is the highway of death. And I'm glad we're really talking about tonight because it is important for people to understand. Yeah, it was a quick war, but it was gruesome for a lot of the Army guys and the Marines and stuff.
Air Force,
and Air Force.
Strafing runs on the highway. I have a friend that was an Air Force pilot, and we still discuss it to this day.
And they say there were 2 ships that hit mines. Actually, there was 3. So yes, and so I always wondered why that only. If you look it up, it only says 2 ships were the ones that hit mines. Well, I remember a USNS also hit a mine, and so
well, there was enough of them out there, that's for sure. I tell you, the credit that I saw for the Air Force was those A-10s. The A-10s they were like 2 bats, and they would, like I said, they take out entire columns. And, that with that 30 millimeter gun that sounded like, a big fat woman farting in the middle of the night, but it was just violence. You'd see that, you'd see the flash of light because it was, everything was cloudy, but you'd see and then you'd hear the burn.
Yep.
But you're watching all of this blowing up before you even hear the burn of the, you won't, I'm telling you, it comes from a place you will not see, a sound you will not hear. By the time anybody on the ground heard that sound, most of them were dead.
Wow.
And the ones that lived, I mean, it was sheer violence.
In 30 days of bombing from the Air Force and the Navy, I mean, that's,
oh my God.
I mean, it was almost to the point where not that you felt sorry, but you had to have some kind of empathy for the troops that were over there just getting their butts whooped, and then, but, there's still the cleanup job, that's still a job to do. And like you said, when they said, now it's time for the ground troops, all Joe wanted to do was go do his job so he could go home. And that's all he wanted to do.
The interesting thing is we ran into a lot of what I called the scrub troops, you know what I mean? The ones that were the draftees. But when you hit the Euphrates River Valley and you hit that Republican Guard, they still had some fight in them. I mean, I have friends that were in 2nd ACR, and from 7th Corps. I mean, had some big battles, big tank battles. We didn't have the tank battles like they had. We had we were dealing with the Iraqi Republican Guard, the commando brigades that were deep inside and in and around, all around Toledo Airfield. And I think it was the 2nd. Anyways, it was the Iraqi 2nd Republican Commando Brigade, and in the Hammurabi division and the Nebuchadnezzar division, which was the division that did the most damage. I had heard they were like the equivalent to the SS in Nazi Germany. They were violent, mean, nasty people. So, it's kind of like you had that same feeling, I guess, that, if you ever watch that movie Fury, those guys are wore out, but they hated the SS because that's the reason why we're here, is what they would say. These are the guys that started this stuff. And the same feeling existed. But it went so quick. Now, we did have a battle of Ramallah oil fields, which was like right after the ceasefire. The enemy had surrendered, and then they were trying to bring an entire division out. That division was wiped out in 20 minutes, maybe. I mean, it was just unbelievable. By the time the air got them, the helicopters got them, the artillery got them, and then the tanks were shooting them in some cases almost a mile away, if not further. So the standoff capabilities, even at that time, were incredible. So it's like, here you are, Joe, with a 50 caliber machine gun and a rifle. Well, not much for you to shoot at, except for celebratory fire,
Exactly.
That and that's true. I mean, if you really think, I mean, I remember this is how it started for us. We didn't get a phone call. We were up standing, watch. It's the nighttime, and and all of a sudden, man, these airplanes start taking off, missile hatches, everything's going up in the air, and we're like, well, shit, we're at war. And that's how we knew, and we could see it from a distance. Everybody's trying to look through them big old long binoculars, like, well, we check it out, and it was cool seeing it from a distance. I was glad I saw it from a distance. Unlike y'all being there. But I kind of want to get a little bit into also.
Let's talk. Yeah.
You came back, but you went back over there again. And
I did. Yeah, I did. I got off of active duty, came back. I worked in the training brigade there at Fort Benning for a while. And then I went back into the National Guard and actually was an active duty recruiter for the National Guard. Great job. Worked in West Virginia, Indiana. Enjoyed that. And then got offered a really great job with Tyson Foods. Now, look, I'm going to tell you, Tyson Foods is one of the best employers, outside of the one that I'm working for now, Vietnam Veterans of America, that I ever had. And I got promoted really quick. I started off, they offered me a great job as a production supervisor in Indiana, Portland, Indiana. Worked my way up, became a safety manager, and went to Tennessee. So this is from 99, late 99 to 2001, I worked for Tyson Foods, and I went from production supervisor to plant safety manager to complex safety manager for the entire Northeast coast, which, oh, by the way, my office happened to be in Buffalo, New York. And I was actually in Tennessee whenever 9/11 had occurred. And when I got this job and I went up to New York, one of the things that we did is we had a cold storage warehouse, over close, like 6 blocks from the Twin Towers. They got damaged because of all of the debris that flew. I mean, it was incredible damage in New York. And trying to get into New York City was a mess. The place was still smoking. We're talking less than a month after the towers came down. I had been called to active duty once already, spent like a week guarding an armory, and then got released. And I was a non-commissioned officer. I was a platoon sergeant for had just got this position in an infantry company. And seeing all of that, I said, I'm going to go back on active duty, because I was mad. I was really mad. There were some things that happened, seeing all that. And I went in and I told my boss, I said, I'm going to quit. I'm going to turn in my resignation. I'm going to go active duty. He's like, He said, you don't have to resign. He says, you go active duty, we'll hold your job between now and then. They were really good to me. They paid me when I went through this process. They took care of me. They gave me a laptop computer. They gave me a cell phone, things that not everybody had, because they knew I'm preparing to leave. But I go to the National Guard. I'm like, I want to get out. And it went all the way up to the brigade commander. It was a 1-star. And this 1-star general came down and talked to me. And he says, there's a program. He says, look, you're going to get to go to war. You're going to go to war. I'm telling you, if you're looking to get some payback, it's coming. Said, I need some armor officers. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to OCS. I'm not going to go to basic training, sir. I said, I'm not interested in that. And quite frankly, I'm not a fan of the officer corps. But he convinced me to apply.
He's kind of breaking up right now. He may have gotten a call, but Wade, you can hear me fine, right?
I can hear you. Absolutely.
Yeah. James may have
Did I
gotten.
lose
There
you?
he is.
Did I lose you there for a minute?
Yeah, you did.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you good. Are you able to hear us? You able to hear us? We can hear you.
Yeah, for some reason I'm having a hard time hearing you.
There we go. We got
Okay.
you there.
Yeah, we got you now. Why don't you plug out and plug right back in? But
Give me just 1 minute here.
all right, what's amazing me though is that when the Twin Towers fell, I don't care every veteran.
Okay, how about now? Better.
Yeah, I hear you great. But when the Twin Towers fell, I don't care where you were, what you were doing. You knew where you were, and as a veteran, you were ready to walk right back in.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. We were, I wanted to go back in.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Let me okay, had to do that real quick. So to make sure my signal's kind of going in and out. Sorry about that. So I applied, I got a direct commission. I was one of 2 direct commissions into combat arms, for the Army at that time, because, you direct commission to be a dentist, a doctor, a chaplain, and all these other things. But as a combat arms officer, that doesn't exist. It didn't really, evidently it existed before. But that's how I got commissioned. So I literally went into a board and presented myself, and the colonel that was there said, well, do you want us to promote you right now? And they cut my stripes off and they put butter bars on my, I was way out of uniform because I didn't have the black stripe down my, my pants or nothing. But, it was kind of cool to see that happen. But, and I started my journey. I took a tank platoon and went to training first, took a tank platoon out to National Training Center. My life was on active duty from April of 2002 until, August of 2005. And it was through training. And once I got back from California, the National Training Center, the Army needed short range air defense artillery officers. So when you're a direct commission, you serve at the will and the pleasure of the Army. So they did what they called a branch detailed assignment. And I went to Air Defense Artillery School down at Fort Bliss, where I met a lot of great young people. And I thought, well, this will be cool. I'll learn how to shoot down aircraft. Well, you found out real quick that there's nothing to shoot down. I was in short range air defense. Incredibly good training, smart people in air defense artillery. Duck hunters are really smart people. And so I was kind of surprised that the Army put me there. but I passed, and I did really well. It wasn't like I really passed, and I came through and I came back and they put me on active duty in Columbus, Ohio. And I worked for the J1. And all I did was go around installing CAC badge readers, man, when they first came out. and not a sexy job for a combat guy, you know, but I did my thing. And then I kept asking, well, when can I get to a unit where I want to go overseas? Afghanistan is where I wanted to go. They said, well, you're going to Iraq, report to this unit. And I reported to a transportation company. And I was like, I'm not a transportation officer. I said, don't worry about it. You're not going to be doing transportation work anyways. And when I got there, they put me as a platoon leader. And when I got on the ground there, it was, you guys are going to do gun trucks, convoy security, route reconnaissance patrol, you know, all of that stuff. So I was I was an armor officer, branch detailed to air defense artillery, attached to a transportation company who was doing convoy security and route reconnaissance missions in Iraq. And we formed a unit called the 518th Combat Gun Truck Company, the U.S. Regulators. And I'm telling you, those are some bad mamma jammas. And if you ever watch the Smithsonian Channel, Gun Trucks of Vietnam, I was in that. Because when we formed that company, you know, I ain't the smartest guy in the room, but I ain't the dumbest one either. But I figured that these Vietnam guys had run gun trucks in Vietnam. And I reached out and I met Richard Kilblain, which is this. So I'm overseas calling these guys from a dang DSN phone, which phones were all over the place this time. So it was beautiful. You know, I mean, you could call home anytime you wanted. And I call him up and he links me up with these Vietnam veterans who at that time are in their 50s, you know, the early 50s. And they were bad dudes, man. And he said, well, what do you need? I'm like, well, we want to know about tactics. We're writing a tactical SOP. I want to know what you're. So I ended up talking to this guy who's now a congressman named Jim Baird from Indiana, by the way. And he was a lieutenant, got his arm blown off in Lam Sam in Vietnam. And he was a wealth of knowledge. Several others, a guy named, his Colonel Horvath was his last name. And they were just willing, you know, James Lyles, who wrote the book, The Hard Ride, and all of these guys that rode around in the gun trucks like Brutus and Ace of Spades and all these other. I mean, these were some bad dudes. That was a part of the war that not anybody really thought about until the war in Iraq kicked off. When the war in Iraq kicked off and we went back to get these Vietnam veterans, we were, you know, we operated using their tactics, and how they did it, I don't know. They found out we didn't have armor plating. They went through DARPA and Lawrence Livermore Laboratories, and I get a call. I get a call from a very pissed off major down at the port saying, "You got 2 pallet full of armor plating down here, Lieutenant. You need to get your ass down here and pick this stuff up." But that was a 6-hour drive one way, man. So we had to go and requisition a truck, a flatbed truck, 3 of them actually, and drive these trucks down there, load this stuff up, bring it back, and then our guys started up armoring our vehicles so we could live. 50 caliber machine guns were not in the Transportation Corps inventory to any large degree. So we went to a field artillery unit from West Virginia, the 201st Field Artillery. And Captain Setzer was the captain there, and a sergeant by the name of Peacock was there. And I went up to him. I said, "Boys, I need 50 cows. Worse than a dead man needs a casket." They're like, "Where are you from?" I said, "Well, I'm from West by God, Virginia, just like you." And then the next thing you know, the love was flowing, man. You know?
There you go. The love was flowing there.
So but it was eerie going back and going over the same terrain that we had attacked during Desert Storm. Going to the Ziggurat and seeing the Talil airfield that I had seen very, you know, and then there was another airfield, Al Salam or something like that. And all of that stuff was still there. All the tanks and stuff that we blowed up, Now, they were stripped out, because the Iraqis had stripped out anything of value. But all of that stuff was still there. So it was like walking through a graveyard, and it literally was a graveyard. So there was that, and that route was actually MSR Tampa. They called it MSR Tampa, which was the highway of death that came out of Kuwait into southern Iraq. And so I got to see a lot of that. And my guys, they were, I'm 30 some years old. I'm 30. Let's see, at that time I was 36 years old. So I was pretty old for a lieutenant.
Right.
And these guys are like, "Hey, LT, what's all that stuff out there?" I said, "Well," I said, "that was from the last war and I was here when I was about your age." And it was interesting, to take them through that. What you're seeing today looks a hell of a lot different than what I saw when I left here. These vehicles were still on fire, and there were still, dead bodies in them. We found some skulls and stuff too out there. I mean, there was, remnants of bones, and of course the dogs had drug bones all over the place. I mean, there was, Iraq is just like that. The value of life was little. That war was just, it was very violent. It was very violent. It was every day there was some kind of chaos. The kids of Iraq are the most heartbreaking thing for me to talk about. But I will tell you, we need to talk about these things because
He's losing connection again. No, he's right though. I believe
when you,
100%.
I don't know what's going on. Yeah, but anyway, you got me on here now, right?
Yeah, we got you back. It's kind of
okay. So, you got my camera on or no?
Oh yeah, everything. But you're right. These
I want
other
you to
things-
see my handsome face. We're all handsome guys.
well-
Man. We're a little bit old.
Well, I'll tell you what, when it blacked out, it got really pretty. No,
It was beautiful then, wasn't it?
that's right. But
You
I
Navy
do
guys
wanna-
are all the same.
I know. I do want to talk about the kids because that is important. That is something that isn't talked about.
Yeah. So one time, I've seen a lot of kids that were murdered by the insurgents over there, and there's just no other way to put it. They knew that it had a psychological effect on us soldiers. But what they didn't realize is when you do that, now I'm going to hunting you. So I am going to hunt you because this is a section of road. If we find a dead kid laying out on the side of the road and it's been killed or they've got their throat cut or, some of the standard things that, this is what that radical Islamic ideology pushes. I'm not being political here. I'm just saying that there is no way that the average American that hasn't been there and seen that doesn't realize. I mean, you just don't know how they treat little girls. I mean, it's
Right.
I've got daughters, you know what I mean? And every time I saw a little dead girl on the side of the road or just laying out there discarded like she was a piece of trash, my heart broke, but it got hard too. It got very hard against the enemy, not against, so when I watch a movie like Fury and I watch how they reacted when they saw the SS, I can feel that, because by that time I had been there almost a year. I had been there. I had watched Christmases and birthdays and missed lives of my children growing up. My grandmother died. My grandfather died. I could not go home for the funeral. So there was a lot of things that occurred that I think had an impact on me psychologically. But I always recognize that I'm the leader here. When you become a leader like that, the one thing you better get used to is being very lonely, and also suppressing your feelings because everybody else in your unit is going through the same thing. They're getting the Dear John letters. Their kids are sick. They're losing their grandparents. And you have to be strong for them. You know, you can't just break down and say, wow. But the kids in Iraq, we befriended them to the best of our abilities and treated them well. And we found that after they got to trust you, I remember the kids would walk up and there'd be a whole gang of them around you. I mean, you just give them candy or a soccer ball, and we're watching. Okay, so we know some of them, you know, it's stuff that they talked about in Vietnam. They'd strap a bomb on a kid too, man. That kind of stuff happens.
Yeah.
But it didn't happen to us. You know what I mean? And those kids would be over there, you know, playing, laughing, and then there'd always be one hanging off to the side, and he'd walk around and say, "Mr. Alibaba," you know, Alibaba, and they would tell us, you know, where these guys were planting roadside bombs, or they'd point to a house where Alibaba, the bad guy, was at. And yeah, they helped us round up a lot of bad people. And you know, most Al Qaeda, and I'm sure your SF guys and stuff that are out there that watch this, you know, most of them don't surrender willingly. You know what I mean? So if you go to approach them, they're going to shoot at you. You know, I mean, it's just going to happen. They're going to try to kill you, or they're going to blow something up, or they're going to, you know, or if they get away, which is the worst thing, if they get away, then they're going to hunt those kids down and they're going to murder those kids because, you know, they know they're smart. They're watching too. So you got to be quick. And we only had a responsibility of the MSR and then 500 meters off of the MSR. So if it was within 500 meters off the MSR, we would go after it. And a lot of times we went further than 500 meters. I'll tell you, we'd go, you know, sometimes as long as it took. Simply because it was so bad, and it was getting bad, and was getting worse. And I went to one place in Bakuba. I think that's where it was at. It was, and there were all these little kids, and they were all dressed in little uniforms, like outfits to go to school. Girls, boys, they were skipping, they were playing, and I'm watching them. We're kind of like, you know, you're starting to relax a little bit. And about that time, boom, you know. Well, we thought it was a bomb. The kids thought it was a bomb. It wasn't. It was a truck that had hit a pothole, and it had nothing in the back of it. So it made this loud boom sound. And I looked over and I saw these kids dive down. They went from happy kids to combat mode kids. So they were mentally prepared to go from ha ha ha, laughing, to I'm terrified for my life. I'm looking for cover. What a hell of a life that is to live. You know what I mean? And look, let's put all the political nonsense aside. We see some of that going on in some of our cities in America right now. They don't want to ride a train now. They don't want to go out in the public anymore because it's so violent and it's so dangerous. And when I see things like that, I think, well, you're just like the insurgents. You know, we've got that in some places where kids can't walk to school. Man, when I was a kid, like with you, we stayed out. Don't come home till the street light comes on, baby. You know,
Right.
Mama wasn't calling you on a cell phone. We didn't have a cell phone. You know, it was like, James, you'd yell, you know.
And if you heard your middle name, you were in complete
you're in
trouble,
trouble
man.
now.
Oh man,
That was real bad.
I mean,
Yeah,
there's
that's
kids
bad,
can't even
man.
play in the front yards anymore. They got to play in the backyard. I mean, it's just sad. It's just not like it used to be. And
Yeah.
I wish we could get back to that.
Well,
time.
what people have to do is face the reality that your political ideology doesn't mean jack squat out here. And you know, if you're following an ideology that condones that or encourages that kind of behavior, then you're not just following politics. You're following an anti-American agenda that's turning this country into what it was like in Bakuba, when your kids are going to hear a truck, you know, backfire or hit something, and they're diving for cover. So these kids, the shock, you know, there were people out there violent men out there in Iraq, that would, should I shoot the American or should I shoot this little girl because that girl shouldn't be going to school? That girl where is her, her hijab at? Why is she wearing that, not wearing that?
Right.
Well, they would opt to shoot the girl. And that is the sad reality. Now, when people hear me say that, they think, well, James, James is telling you the truth because I lived it. You know what I mean? And my guys lived it.
And we were fortunate we didn't at that time.
Yeah.
We were very fortunate. And
Yeah,
now,
and insurgency is bad. And insurgent war is, and that's why I went to the guys from Vietnam, because that's the war they fought. They fought the exact same kind of war,
right. Now, before we ended the
Yeah.
program and going to the after the show, you talked about Vietnam Veterans of America that you work for. And you also, what people need to understand, you're working for us there
Yes.
with them. And so can you talk elaborate?
Sure. Yeah. So
little bit
I'm
about
the
that?
executive. I'm the executive director of government affairs. Ron Brown actually works with me. He's one of our volunteers. Vietnam Veterans of America is the only veterans organization in America that I can tell you, and I belong to a bunch of them. I'm not just slapping them in the face. I'm saying this is as the truth. But we have taken the country to task over Gulf War illness because these guys have lived through the whole Agent Orange thing. Ron Brown will tell you. We just recently was in the Department of War. I think he told you about that meeting that we had. You had a show on that, and in sitting in there, Ron has a lot of institutional knowledge related to this. I would say, he's ranked up there in the top 5 in the nation that knows what happened. But more importantly, he also has the wherewithal and the cojones to tell them the truth. And he fits right in with all of us because you had myself, you had the president of Vietnam Veterans of America, Tom Burke. You had Dominic Yezo, a Vietnam veteran from New York. He was a retired judge. You had me, you know what I mean, a Gulf War and an Iraqi freedom vet, and you had Ron Brown. The table was lined with people, and I want to say that they're good people. Okay, we'll say that they're good people. But there was an initial reluctance, and then when our New York attorney, a retired judge, spoke up and he says, before we get started, I want to decide whether or not you're going to be a friend or an adversary. So if you're going to be a friend, we'll work with you. If you're going to be an adversary, then I want you to reflect on the history of Vietnam Veterans of America, what we did to get ourselves to the point to where you finally recognize Agent Orange. And they were relentless. And if people, a lot of times they'll say, well, these are just a bunch of old guys or old girls or whatever. They got a lot of oomph. They got a lot of oomph, and they got us now, the next generation. And the problem is because everyone, when we went into that meeting, not a thing was about Vietnam veterans. We didn't care. It was about a veterans group that has been largely ignored, marginalized, the Gulf War veterans and your Cold War veterans who've been exposed to radiation, you sailors out there on these ships, to asbestos and everything else under the sun, have been the largest marginalized population of veterans. That's fact. Post 9/11, I'm one of those guys. I get a lot of benefits from post 9/11. But I've also one of you. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I've seen guys and gals that are largely ignored by the VA because it's like, it's been so long ago. We have a lot of cleaning up to do to make this right. But more importantly, when I took this job, I said, I want to come in here because I have a mission. I want to build bridges. And if you don't want to build a bridge with me, that's fine. We'll move around you. We'll continue on to do our thing. But if you become an adversary, I look at that as the not an enemy like I faced in the war, but a different type of enemy, an enemy to progress, an enemy to compassion, an enemy to humanity, an enemy to decency and doing the right thing and honor. You know, our warrior ethos says never leave a fallen comrade behind, never leave anybody behind. But we've done it and done it and done it and done it. We've got 38,000, fallen service members all around the world that we have not yet recovered from World War II forward. When we have the Gulf War veterans, we have the radiation exposed veterans that were in Europe during the Cold War. You have so many different folks, and everybody looks at this as a dollar sign. And when I see veterans groups going in just lobbying for their little thing, I question their honor and integrity. Because if you're not going after it for the team, I didn't just fight for James McCormick, my little 50 caliber machine gun, and my little crew. It was for every person that we were there to protect. And we were willing to take bullets. We were willing to die, for that. That's honor. That's integrity. Vietnam Veterans of America have a founding principle that says, never again shall one generation of veterans abandon another. When we came home from Desert Storm, Vietnam veterans were everywhere.
Everywhere.
They were everywhere.
Hugging
You're
you,
right.
loving you, telling you, welcome home. And they were going to make damn sure that we didn't get treated like they got treated. And back then, they were in their late 30s and early 40s. They kicked your hind end, man. They rode around in motorcycle gangs and stuff. They were bad dudes, man, and they still are in some cases. But they gave us so much love. The same thing when we came back from this war. The same thing when my two sons went to war. That's an entire aspect of me that people don't always know. I watched two sons go to war and come back very different young men. Broken and shattered and wondering what the hell they were doing, But these Vietnam veterans of America, these posts, they were there. They were there to say, God bless you when you left, and they were there to welcome the ones home that came home. And it's a beautiful relationship. We hope to take Vietnam Veterans of America into the future, to start welcoming in new generations of veterans. So I think you're gonna see a little bit of a change. You'll see a little bit of a separate division of VVA. Maybe it'll be called something like Veterans Victory Alliance or something like that. And we're going to really go after the veterans that have been left behind, because we don't want them to be left behind anymore. We don't.
You just said, I couldn't have said that any more better than what you said right there. I mean, that's the one thing about it. If there's anything we can do to help you, man, we're right along with you on this. I think that every veteran should not be left behind. We should all stick together, stop fighting, stop bickering, and start showing more compassion. And that's why I say every day, open the door for somebody. You'll learn compassion. Tell somebody that they look good every day. You change one life. That's the life you changed. And if you change that one life, that person may change 2. That person may change 8. It just, the compassion can go on. And, is there anything else you would like to add before we hop into the after show?
Well, I just like to say this to all my fellow veterans out there. If no one's told you they loved you today, I do. And God loves you too.
No,
I'm telling you.
Amen.
Amen.
It's a fact.
I love that. Well, with that being said, I would like to thank everybody for listening. We're now going to go into the after show. Thank you so much for coming on, James. Thank you for all you do for us. I appreciate it 100%. I know most people do. And tonight, a lot of GULFWAR vets are going to be able to see this and be able to understand that there is a fight for us out there.
Absolutely.
I would like to say one quick thing.
Go ahead.
If we do open up membership, I would love to get a commitment from you guys to join us. And I'd like to start hearing from these GULFWAR veterans, because I think literally that there's hundreds of thousands of veterans out there that don't belong to organizations just because they need to find a place where they fit in, and we want to make that home for them.
You know,
So that's a goal.
I'd like to
Amen.
back that up with and say, you know, I'm a member of the Legion. I'm a member of the VFW, but nor do I go to the post because I don't feel like I fit in. So if I'm sure Kevin will second this, but if this comes about and you're going to have a membership for that for someone like our generation, we'd welcome you to come back, announce it on the show, and Kevin and I will be right there to be the first to start.
We'll be the first to sign up.
All right. I'm gonna hold you to it, man.
Hey man, I'm in, baby. I'm in. Well, with that
Yeah.
being said, thank y'all for listening tonight. Also, they do. Mr. McCormick here has a veteran channel on Roku. Y'all need to go check it out. It's really awesome. They have put us up there. We love it. We really appreciate it. And with that being said, y'all can get a hold of me if you have any questions at Kevin Simon at GULFWARSideEffects.com. Kevin Simon at GULFWARSideEffects.com. Get a hold of Wade. You know, get a hold of me. If y'all have anything y'all like to talk to James about, man, we'll get you in touch and everything. So we want to tell everybody good night, and we will see y'all next week. Thank y'all for listening. Thank you.
Welcome to Continue Mission Radio with Captain James McCormick. By veterans, for veterans. Guest hosts tonight are author Greg Meekin and Miss Val, our military radio gal. Continue Mission starts now.
You got me headed to the left, headed to the right, headed back and forth, but baby, it's alright. You got me going to the east, going to the west, going up and down, 'cause baby, you know best. All day, all night, running around. I'm never gonna stop because you never settle down. You got me shooting into space, flying at the sun. I'm never coming back.